Good morning.
Morning.
Happy birthday. Sure.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh,
Careful, careful. Thank you.
welcome everybody. Welcome, Your Holiness, the Dalai Lama. And now some comments from Rajiv Mehrotra, who has been a student of His Holiness the Dalai Lama for some 30 years and helps run the Dalai Lama Foundation, which was started after His Holiness won the Nobel Peace Prize. Rajiv.
We're deeply blessed and privileged to be meeting here in the presence of one of the great teachers of our times. I think when the history of our times is written, His Holiness the Dalai Lama's name will be etched in history as the preeminent teacher. And I think it's very appropriate that we discuss the ideas around education in his presence. What makes him unique is that not only is he a preeminent teacher, but he is also, at age 80, a preeminent student. He embodies the highest aspirations of the Indo-Tibetan civilizational heritage, which juxtaposed training of the mind with the acquiring of knowledge. And that was circumscribed in turn with what His Holiness so profoundly manifests and is the motivation behind it. So it was more than 2,500 years ago under the Bodhi tree when Prince Siddhartha, left the palace. And he left the palace in search of an understanding about the human condition that would liberate human beings from suffering. So his motivation was not just the end of his suffering, but the end of suffering of all humankind. And so the motivation that drives His Holiness's quest for knowledge and training the mind is the insight and wisdom that will liberate not just him from the suffering of the human condition, but all of us. And it is this, in some ways, that is the difference, perhaps the distinction between the Western sensibility of education. The purpose, the pursuit of education, as I mentioned, bringing together both training the mind and acquiring knowledge, and the purpose for which you seek to do this. Not merely to further your careers, not merely that we can ensure a livelihood, that is not important, but that is not the dominant imperative. And behind His Holiness is a simple Buddhist monk, Tenzin Gyatso, and who if he hadn't been the Dalai Lama, could have well been Dr. Tenzin Gyatso, because he started his education as after he was discovered as a Dalai Lama, went through the rigors of a traditional Tibetan education, and in public debate had to win his spurs as a geishe, which is the equivalent of a doctorate. So it wasn't that this somehow sort of his holiness descended from the heavens, the holiness part of His Holiness. It involved hard work. And it is that hard work that continues till today. So at age 80, he isn't sitting back on his wisdom and his knowledge and the manner in which he is celebrated around the world, but continues to engage in several hours of practice every day. And what is that practice? The practice, again, is first training the mind, cultivating compassion, using the techniques of training the mind, so it's not just an intellectual understanding of compassion, but as we see manifest in His Holiness, is that it represents his deepest reflexive responses. And that is the genius of the heritage that he embodies. It's not merely all here, but it's here and here. And those of us who've had the privilege of spending some time with His Holiness and watching him, his education has meant that he, more than anyone else that we know of, actually lives and walks his talk. And that is this ancient tradition of Nalanda and of the Indian sages that traveled to Tibet and that he embodies. So, as I mentioned to those of you who were here yesterday, that the Dalai Lama is celebrated not just for what he says or what he writes, but who he is. And that who he is really the aspiration of the education system that he represents, so the techniques and processes of education. And having said that, we have a living example, an embodiment of that aspiration, and that is what gives us hope and confidence that in our own human striving, that is attainable and achievable. It's not something out there. It's here, living on stage. And in our humility, in our lack of self-confidence, we might believe that it's not possible. But His Holiness teaches us that it is. And so the Buddha was not the final word, and there have been many Buddhas and Bodhisattvas that have followed, because what the Buddha taught, as the Dalai Lama does, that the same aspiration that he has for himself is possible for all of us. And so we celebrate His Holiness, and he must be tired of being wished a happy birthday, because I know we all like to pride ourselves on the first celebrations, but I think that was on March the 23rd in New Delhi that we started wishing him happy birthday. So let's just say a happy 80th birth year, Your Holiness. And I yield to my very good friend, Bob Thurman, who has so masterfully bridged the West and the East, and was amongst His Holiness's first Western students, and is far more qualified than I am to talk about His Holiness's own journey and his own teachings.
Thank you. Now today the emphasis is on education and on the youth. And as Rajiv said, we've been congratulating His Holiness about his happy birthday, and it is truly wonderful. And what His Holiness, the great gift His Holiness has given to us, is really the hope that there is a good future on this planet for us all. And for you young people, it sometimes must look very, very daunting, because our older generation has created a situation where the planet is being overheated, global warming out of control. The militarization of the planet is still very much in gear, and tremendous competitive international situation. Very many worrisome situations are there. And all the different systems that seem to be functioning seem to have failed to a great extent. And education is preparing you really in a way for a world that may no longer exist. Having been a university professor for over almost 50 years, 45 years, I'm fully aware that my students who graduate are not necessarily really prepared for the world. So anyway, His Holiness' great gift for us is a hope, and he sometimes expresses this hope in terms of 4 points of hope. He brings us to compare the beginning of this 21st century with the beginning of the 20th century. And in the beginning of the 20th century, everyone thought on the planet that war was the most important and the deciding factor in human affairs. And whoever won wars, they were in charge. And whereas in the beginning of the 21st century, we have come to realize that nobody really wins any wars, and they don't really, they last, but there's no winner. And even the victor destroys themselves by destroying others. And therefore, the people as a whole, not necessarily, unfortunately, the leadership, but the people as a whole are sick and tired of wars. There is no people that wants to go to war anymore on the whole planet. And this His Holiness constantly maintains and bravely speaks out in all sorts of forums that it is a time of reconciliation, dialogue between, and conflict is to be resolved in that way, and it is useless to just destroy everything in a war. And the second major point of hope is that 100 years ago, there was a great notion that the earth is endlessly going to absorb our mess, and people just throw things over the side, and the environment will take care of it. And now people have realized that the earth, the water, the temperature, and even the air is too easily polluted and cannot absorb all of the mess that we make. And so, whereas 100 years ago it was like that, now everybody and all the people, again, not necessarily the leadership, but all the people do not want the environment to be destroyed, and particularly the young people. They need a place where they can live a green earth, a green planet, and His Holiness maintains hope that because that is the will of the world's people, all of them, and especially the young, that will also happen in your century. And then third point is that everyone, the green planet will be yours to live in, and we will try to make a big change now and fix it. Everyone will. And then the third point of hope is that 100 years ago, people thought that systems would fix everything. Machines, capitalism, communism, socialism, this or that institution would solve everything. And nowadays, people have lost faith in many institutions, even national governments. They have rightfully actually lost faith in the valid leadership of many national governments, but they somehow still controlled by them. And so now, however, the emphasis is on the individual, is on the power of you as individuals to make tremendous changes and to really build yourself as a person and make your gift and contribution to the world. And finally, the fourth major point of hope that His Holiness points to is that 100 years ago, everybody expected materialist science to deliver the life on, immortality and good health and happy life for everybody on Earth. And now, in this century, we have realized that the technology and materialism, while very, very wonderful and powerful, it has, and done many great things, it has nevertheless magnified the mind, the greed, the anger, and the confusion and ignorance of human beings in such a way that even our own environment is being destroyed, and our health is far from really solved. We have new diseases, and there are tremendous difficulties await us. And so technology clearly is not going, although some people still think that we'll all move to Mars, or we'll all do something else after we've wrecked this planet. I think James Cameron Avatar sort of showed us the error of our ways. And so now those are the 4 points of hope, that we now know that there is some sort of spiritual science, some sort of mind science, that happiness is a skill, actually, that you cultivate, that compassion is something that you should be learning at UC Irvine. You should be learning how to cultivate your compassion, not simply mindfulness. There should be the core curriculum that existed at the great Nalanda University, that His Holiness often says he is the son of Nalanda University, not just some particular religious sect. He's really a follower of the great educational tradition where the core curriculum was not just the training of the brain, but was the training of the heart. When His Holiness received honorary degree from Columbia University 20 years ago or more, he did say to the trustee and faculties, he said, "Thank you for the degree. I love getting honorary degrees, especially because I don't have to do any work." He said, and then everybody laughed. And then he said, and education is the most important thing for the planet, he said. "But I worry a little about your education here," he said. And the president and the trustees looked like this. And he said, "Because you focus on producing a clever brain, and you really don't pay attention to how to produce a good heart. So please shift your education. Shift your education focus to add to the wonderful, wonderful intelligence and wonderful explorations of the clever brain, but add to it the cultivation of the good heart. And so that people will graduate having a loving nature, compassionate nature based on wisdom of the reality that compassion is the way to live, and the way to be happy yourself, actually, is to make other people happy. So in that light, the birthday gift that the youth that the main focus of this morning is, can offer to His Holiness birthday, the generosity is to carry forward and to prepare themselves for those 4 positive things: nonviolence, no war; environmental care rather than destruction; not relying on systems like the Democratic Party or the Republican Party or even national governments, but relying on their own individual communities; and finally, cultivating their heart and learning how to do it. Doesn't mean being religious necessarily, could be with any different method, but developing higher awareness, greater love and compassion, and slowly, bit by bit, baby step, cultivate that and have a happy life. That's your gift, your birthday gift to His Holiness, all you young people. Thank you very much.
And to that end, there is a Dalai Lama scholars program, including here at UCI. We have a videotape to introduce it to you.
So my project was an art installation in making peace flags that circled Aldridge Park. All of the peace flags had personal messages to end conflicts in the world.
My project partner is Blanca Castro, and we worked on Peace Week at UC Irvine.
Our project was about bringing this Peace in Action Summit and Peace Week onto our campus to provide awareness about peace building and nonviolence.
My project is called Bridging Anteaters, which focuses on 1, a high school mentorship program at Los Amigos High School, and 2, a service week at UCI. My ability to, in everything I do, bring compassion and to see the difference when you do that, the positive results when you act with compassion and how transformative that can be.
One of the great aspects of this program is that there's a partnership program called Dalai Lama Fellows. You get exposed to scholars and fellows from around the world who are doing these compassion projects and making change in their communities.
We want that compassion to be spread, that we want that nonviolence to be heard, and those types of awarenesses are something we stick to.
You see how passionate students are when they are able to have the ability to think and create.
Hi, Your Holiness. I just want to wish you a happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Your Holiness. You have had such an impact on the world.
I wish you a very happy birthday, and I thank you for all the inspiration.
Happy birthday, and I hope you enjoyed it. I know it's chaotic, but I hope you enjoyed it.
And the director of the program is Karina Hamilton. Karina.
Good morning. How's everybody doing out there? Woo! How about a quick happy birthday to His Holiness? Come on, happy birthday! So it is my privilege to be the director of the Dalai Lama Scholarship. His Holiness first visited our campus back in 2004, and a visionary group of local benefactors established the very first scholarship in his name. Since then, we've had dozens of scholars do projects related to peace, compassion, or ethics. And I think, as His Holiness says many times, you can cultivate wisdom, you can cultivate compassion, but the important thing is putting those two things together and doing something. And what is so exciting to me is that that's what these students do here at UC Irvine. And they have taken these wonderful ideals, put them together, and actually taken action within our community and beyond on things like interfaith cooperation, on Peace Week, on Kindness Month, on mentoring. And it's extraordinary to see what a small group of dedicated people can do to change the world. Rather than waiting, they're taking action now. So I would just like to say to His Holiness, your gift to us was actually bringing that concept of bringing compassion and wisdom together so that we have compassion in action. And I urge each and every one of you to do that every single day in honor of His Holiness and to take that forward. And in connection with that, with the Dalai Lama Scholarship, we then partnered with the Center for Living Peace, which is an extraordinary local organization founded by Kelly Thornton Hallman, and she actually partnered with us to create the Living Peace series. We've brought amazing speakers like Ibu Patel, who's on the stage with us, Lema Bowie, Jane Goodall, and just incredible speakers who, again, their message is all about taking action. We can do something every single day to change this world. And in connection with that program, we actually has blossomed the Dalai Lama Fellows program. It is established in San Francisco, and now over the last 5 years have fellows all over the world. There are now over 100 fellows and UCI scholars all over the world who are doing this action, and they are taking that forward into their lives. So first of all, I would just like to again wish you happy birthday, His Holiness. Thank you for all of your guidance and wisdom and your sense of humor and your giggle. And we really appreciate all of your leadership. Thank you so much. It's now my honor to bring some of our students with us to just be recognized on the stage, and some of them you saw in the video. These are the Dalai Lama Scholars and the Dalai Lama Fellows. Please give them a warm welcome. Thank you very much. So as you can see, we have a big crowd up here. But in the meantime, I'd also like to talk about the partnership with Center for Living Peace. It is founded on collaboration, creativity, but the heart of it is really compassion. It's about, again, taking compassion, turning it into action. Over the last 5 years, we've created a partnership with the Center for Living Peace that is going to endure for decades. We're creating a curriculum, just like Robert Thurman was talking about. We are going to have a core curriculum that is going to really be focused so that every single student at this university will be touched by compassion, kindness, ethical leadership, intentionality, and taking service out into the world. If you do that every year with 7,000 to 8,000 students, think of the impact that we can have, not only here, but around the world. So I'm very grateful for her leadership and for her staff and for their really kind partnership with all of us. And so we are committed, Mr. Thurman, to putting this right into our curriculum. So thank you, and we are so grateful for this opportunity. Again, thank you very much.
So now a photograph is being arranged. If you could all look out, if you want to come on this side of His Holiness
The
to kind
photo
of
op
balance
of
the
all
photograph
time.
out.
How many
according
people
to the
can we get up
interpreter.
here on one stage?
And
I
there'll be a
think?
photograph taken for posterity
The
for these
stage
students.
may go down at any moment. I'm not quite sure. Okay. Guess I'll get in the photo.
Okay, there are two more here behind me who are coming along because they want to be in the picture. And here we go. All right? Okay, perfect.
And so again, thank you to all of you, and I'd also like to thank the hundreds of UC Irvine staff and to the all of our partners for making this weekend possible, and thank you to all of you for being here for this very special occasion. Thank you.
As you can see, a very wonderful moment for these students. Thank you, Corinna. You might have seen some members of our panel jump up to be in that photograph. It wasn't because they were inserting themselves. Actually, one of them actually was awarded the Dalai Lama Endowed Scholarship in 2011. He is a member of our panel today as we talk about the significance of education in advancing universal human values. His name is, please welcome, Armand Rauther. We have to his left a former advisor to Secretaries of State Condoleezza Rice and Hillary Clinton. He is today the director of Google Ideas. Please welcome Jared Cohen. We also have to his left what they say in the profession as a triple threat. She is a singer, dancer, as well as an actress, and she has also worked to raise awareness about human suffering throughout the world. Please welcome Zendaya. Continuing down the line, we have an actor and director who has formed a production company for the purpose of creating productions that focus on compassion. Please welcome Justin Baldoni. You know Corinna, you've met Corinna. To her left is film producer and also supporter of His Holiness and his works, Justin Nappy. We've got also a young woman who is a teen activist. She works to stomp out bullying, Danielle Nizam. And to her left is a young man you're not going to believe. He's actually 14 years old, and he looks like he's eating his Wheaties there. He is the co-founder of what's called Kids Eco Club, which focuses on environmental conservation. He began it at the age of 10. Max Gwynn. To my right, we have a young actress who has worked to help women who suffer from domestic violence. Her name is Regina Hall. You've now met Bob and Rajiv, and to Rajiv's right is a man who has been the founder and president of Interfaith Youth Corps, which brings together young people of different faiths to find commonality. Ibu Patel, please welcome him. And to his right, a very special treat. We have actually a native Hawaiian navigator. He's hugely respected by Hawaiians because he's been working to preserve the ancient method of Hawaiian navigation before it is lost. And for sharing this wisdom with young people, please welcome Nainoa Thompson. So, of course, we want to begin with His Holiness, who's sitting, with whom we're all pleased to be, all of us in this audience, to be here with. And so, Your Holiness, we've heard about the importance of perhaps changing the way we educate young people to increase our understanding of human values. How would you want all young people educated in the world so they could have a better sense about human values? What would be, for example, the required reading? What do you want to change about how we learn in the world?
I think that's difficult to say. I myself, as far as modern education is concerned, me zero, nothing. Only as the Thurman mentioned, since childhood, I study mainly those Nalanda masters' writing. I think generally people consider these books are something holy religious book. But actually, not that. These books contains a detailed explanation about our mind and also, to some extent, matters. So now I think nearly 30 years. I think same audience yesterday.
I think maybe this audience might be slightly younger, Your Holiness. With all due respect to yesterday, there are many young people here today.
Okay.
Many students.
So I want to know, today, those people who not attended yesterday's our meeting or yesterday or the other day, some new, please raise hand. Oh. Okay. Otherwise, my talk become repetition. Repetition, and audience may feel boring. So last over 30 years, there's a series of discussion with scientists. I think since there's many new people, so 4 fields: cosmology, neurobiology, physics, particularly quantum physics, and then psychology. So after 30 years of serious discussion, it became clear such meeting is mutual benefit. To us, the scientific findings, the cosmology, these things, and also brain, the function of our brain. And still scientists, brain specialists, still some kind of dilemma. They say whether there is third factor, to affect our brain or not. Some scientists now begin to feel, there is some sort of another third factor. So that we call subtle level of consciousness. Consciousness, there are grosser level, like sensorial consciousness, are very gross level. Then dream time, another level of consciousness. Then when deep sleep, more deeper consciousness. Then we faint, at that time, another deeper level of consciousness. The deepest at the time of death. So now here, this is last, I think, over 50 years, nearly 50 years. There are a number of cases, person who passed away or death, after death, physical body remain very fresh. So now some scientists showing interest about that. So some want to carry some investigation, research work. So our explanation is the grosser level of consciousness, or even is a more subtle level of consciousness, is when blood circulation ceases, then brain stop or die. So then grosser level of consciousness now no longer function. Now most subtle level of consciousness, more or less independent. So those persons who clinically dead, but body still remain fresh. So there are some to scientists, this is something mysterious thing. You see, according to our sort of explanation, and these Buddhist sort of psychology or Buddhist sort of, according to Buddhist science of mind, there is some explanation. So like that. So to us, the scientific finding, very, very helpful. As a result of learning from scientific sort of view or scientific finding, the one casualty is now me no longer believe Mount Meru.
Traditional Buddhist cosmology.
Some Buddhist literature mentioned that. So now some of these authors really, like Bosbundu, very respected sort of scholar, practitioner. So I see Bo Kasa in his name, but they respectfully, express, I can't accept. You see here sort of explanation about Mount Meru. It's outdated. So, you see, yesterday also I mentioned, I think one quite unique thing, Nalanda tradition. We have liberty to reject even Buddha's own word if that particular subject goes against our investigation or reason, then we have right to object. So many Nalanda masters, they carry that sort of principle. Because I think yesterday also, I think I mentioned, now put two new people, okay, no problem. The Buddha stated, all my followers, monks, scholars, should not accept my teaching out of faith, out of devotion, but rather thorough investigation and experiment. So, I also took the liberty to reject. Some old monk, a little uncomfortable. When I say, for example, one time Apollo reached moon. Some picture there. So one occasion I show that picture to some my friend, old monk, scholar, and he expressed, "Oh, this might be some part of Mount Meru." Like that. So in any way, I trained these books and Buddhist philosophy. I think Buddhist philosophy, like quantum physics, very similar. One, my Indian friend, Raja Ramana, he nuclear physicist. One time he told me, quantum physics in the world, in modern world, is something new concept. But in India, over 2,000 years ago, already developed that concept, he mentioned. It is quite true. When I have more serious discussion with quantum physicists, then seems to see very surprisingly very similar, like that. So very useful for us. And then, as far as psychology is concerned, the modern scientist, a result of after almost 30 years of discussion, they found a lot of they found a lot of information about emotion, about mind. So therefore, these texts, now I realize quite useful as far as these knowledge about consciousness, about mind, about emotion. Then it is quite useful. You see, with fuller knowledge about this whole system of mind or emotion, then much easier to tackle like that. So that should consider science of mind, not religion. Then philosophy, such as quantum physics, is philosophy, not religion. So these texts which we study, we can divide three parts: science part, then philosophical part, then religious part. So the religious part only for Buddhists. But two other things, philosophy and the psychology, these are something universal. So I think in the modern education, I think can be utilized some of these information, I think. So I don't know about modern education. Even you see, mathematics, difficult. We usually, use rosary, some kind of sort of method to count. So very, very backward. So I have, because not a position, to give some advice like that. Then I usually, now, stressing. I usually make two generations. Two categories of generation. Generation of 20th century, a generation of 21st century. The 20th century, my generation belongs to 20th century. That century gone. Past, no force can change past. The future yet to come. So there is possibility change future. That entirely depends on now, present. Although philosophically, like quantum physics, if you analyze, what is present? No present. Year, eon, millennium, then century, then decade, then year, month, week, hour, or day, and the hour, minute, second, 1 second, up to 1 second, past. 1 second, not yet come, future. So where is present? If we analyze, we cannot find present. Without a present, and how can how to describe past and future? Past, future entirely depend on present. The present, then difficult to find. So then, no question, no past, no future. If we analyze, things are analyzed, like any flower or anything, ourselves also, we easily say, now here, for example, Dalai Lama Tenzin Gyatso. It's true. Now, this very moment, Dalai Lama Tenzin Gyatso speaking. But if you analyze the body of the Dalai Lama, mind of Dalai Lama, so the real owner of Dalai Lama, where? Beside body, mind, nothing. Body also, head, hand, this side, and then leg. If you separate, we cannot find body. Finger, upper part, middle, lower. If you analyze, we can't find. So that is similar quantum physics. Now, why is it important about that concept is our destructive emotion very much based on some kind of exaggeration or mental projection. That mental projection very much based on the feeling of grasping something on the basis of appearances, not reality. So one my American psychologist, you see, he, after sort of few decades of experience, he mentioned that when we develop anger, the object which feels angry, that object appears very negative. But actually, 90% of that negativeness is mental projection, not true. So this very much related with the concept or things. So the things exist as appear. Appearance is independent sort of existing. Investigate, nothing. So that's, you see, so this text quite, so now actually coming November, we will going to have one sort of seminar with quantum physicists at national level in India. So Jawaharlal Nehru University now already sort of city agree. Plan host. Oh, like that. So some Buddhist philosopher, they say we going to discuss these things. So in any way, so this quite story. So the subject to which I study, and then practice, implement. Now, 80-year-old person. Now, this knowledge about mind, very useful, and also very helpful to know that if we investigate, nothing exists independently. That direct sort of, because of the countermeasure for destructive emotion. Really very, very helpful. These things, not talking about heaven, not talking about next life, but this very, very life, day by day, day to day. You see, these concepts very helpful. And then also, they practice because of the value of compassion. Really, very helpful. I think the best medicine to
make younger.
Oh, I think the medicine, effective medicine, actually not expensive. Medicine sometimes you see quite expensive. So the training of your own mind of compassion. You see, no need doctor, no need medicine, but all of us, you see, have that potential. Realize that. You see, utilize that. Then very, very helpful for healthy body. So then, you see, I was told, whether you see true or not, I'm not very sure. There's some old lady, you see,
They tie up their hair.
Their hair. So that helpful to wrinkle reduce. I mean, you, no worry. Very fresh, very young. So like that, you see, sometimes you see people look as a mirror in your own face. Sometimes you feel, oh, now become too old like that. So you see, if you really serious concern about that, then practice compassion. That directly sort of affects anger, worry, fear, stress. So very, very helpful. Okay.
Sure, of course. Just hand it to one of the
So I
by
very
the
much
side while we continue the conversation.
So I very much appreciate this the university already started Kasoda.
Dalai Lama Scholars Program. Yeah.
Oh, and stress about the kindness or compassion. I think I very much appreciate. You see, my sort of today case is just to talk. You see, you are something like hand action. So I very much appreciate. So therefore now, the generation of 20th century, now we more or less gone. The 21st century, just the beginning. So although we can't find, you see, what is the beginning? So now, because aside we're talking about this deeper level of reality, just as a conventional level, yes, we are enjoy because of present, like that. So therefore, you see the beginning of this 21st century, the generation of 21st century, if you make attempt with vision and realistic approach, then this 21st century will be something extraordinary century. That means continuation of violent century, but this century eventually become peaceful, happy, compassionate century. That we can do. So sometimes I jokingly, you see, telling people, young people, you see, if you make attempt now with vision, then the end of this century could be peaceful century. This I will not see. At that time, I may be either heaven or hell. Even hell, you see, I can sort of kasoda. I can get permission 1 week sort of kasoda.
Leave now.
Leave. So I will come to the planet and see or examine these 21st century's generation really, you see, create better world or still miserable world. If you see miserable world still remain there, then when I return to hell, I will report, please, hell must expand. There are a lot of mischievous people still there. So, that's all. Thank you. Now, I'm ready. I'm eager to listen all these peoples.
So His Holiness is talked about how if you live a life of compassion and you can sort of get in touch with your internal self and understand emotion and really become an investigator in the truth, and that will lead you to kindness, that you will live longer, that you won't need medicine. He has actually been told by his doctors that he is in such great shape that he could actually live another 30 years. So it'll be a long time. So that seems to be indicative that he seems to know something about what he's talking about. And also in discussing this idea of encouraging us to be critical thinkers, and no matter what your religion, whether you are a person of faith or an atheist, to feel embraced and to embrace. I think maybe the first thing to do before we get to these student leaders is to kind of face the reality that it would be wonderful if what we just heard from His Holiness was available to every young person in the world. But it is not at the moment. You two have been students of His Holiness. And it seems to me what has happened is that there's a possibility that we, as now the beneficiaries of this lesson that we've just heard, are going to have to be the ones carrying the message out, that it's not available to our students in schools. Rajiv, do you have something to say about what you've learned from His Holiness specifically about how the path to compassion that everyone listening could potentially want to carry to their children, to their communities, so that this can expand. And because I think also with these leaders of these students here, all these people who lead young people and influence young people, that they might be able to benefit as well as they continue in their work.
Well, I'm not the best example of His Holiness's students, not a very successful one, but I think that there are specific techniques of mind training, of visualization, and I think that the practice in reality goes beyond merely mindfulness. So you have techniques such as exchanging oneself with others, which means that you first visualize your mother, assuming you don't have a neurotic relationship with your mother, and you visualize the mother's love, and then you replace the mother with somebody who's neutral and transfer those feelings to the person who's neutral, and then even to the enemy.
Even to the enemy.
To the enemy. And I remember that my first visit to Dharamsala in 1981, I was very moved by the fact that the monks, their prayer mat said, "Pray for the Chinese." And on the 10th of March, which was the anniversary of their escape into, His Holiness's escape into India, they started the ceremony with "May the veils of ignorance lift from the Chinese." So it was a juxtaposition of, even at the face of the greatest provocation, to cultivate through prayer at one level, compassion for the person who hates you most, and specific techniques and practices that would enable that. I think one of the challenges is that in education, that particularly in countries such as the United States, with their understanding of secularism, that some of these techniques and practices may have associations with being Buddhist. And that's why I think that's one of the reasons why His Holiness is so much at pains to emphasize the distinction between aspects that are Buddhist and those that are in the realm of psychology and science, and hence acceptable to the community. So I think in real terms, what educators in countries such as here are going to need to evolve are these techniques that will generate these in a more concentrated, intensive form, and that sort of mentioned briefly in my introduction, so that they become reflexive responses. So that they become, and I think that is the ultimate test, not just our considered actions, which are important, but how we reflexively respond to situations. And His Holiness often talks about how we need to change our mental diet. And so the more we change our mental diet consciously by acts of kindness or particular kinds of affirmations or prayers, that it begins to impact the consciousness, the mind matter, in a sense, so that that impact is more enduring. And so I think the challenge for education is to move beyond the conceptual, beyond the rhetorical, beyond the curriculum, to the experiential in deep and profound ways.
So the idea then, do you want to add something briefly to that, Bob?
Oh, me?
Yes.
Oh, well, I think Rajiv said very well, and although he said he's not the best student, I think he's more successful than me. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because His Holiness has taught me now for 51 years, and I continually fail to realize his teaching, so much so that actually my wife had to step in, and she has been very much my teacher over many years. And whenever I get out of hand and I'm not listening, which is one of my failings, she will always refer to His Holiness. "Oh, you will listen to His Holiness, but not to me," she will say. So she becomes like a mirror. You know, I was a monk for a while, and although I was advised not necessarily to do that because of my karma as an American. And in Buddhism, it's a lifelong commitment. And I intended it as a lifelong commitment and didn't listen to my advice of just living as a monk while a student and then just trying to be like a regular American. So then my poor wife had to pick up the pieces when I stopped being a monk, and she had to train me further. And I do think that men, particularly, have a difficult time in this world because we're in a time in the world when the men are not any longer unquestionably the power in the world. And if they don't listen to their wives and their mothers and their daughters, they are in deep trouble. Hell has already expanded, Your Holiness, when men don't listen to the women.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you,
And
Bob.
but after 51 years, I can say my wife admits, although I'm still imperfect, the combination of His Holiness's teaching and my learning to listen a little more. Actually, I thought I was becoming enlightened recently, but I was only becoming deaf. Then I got hearing aids, and now I can listen better. So that combination has given me the credential of having shown a slight improvement. And in my case, as a proper redneck American, that's a good thing. We need to have such a slight improvement. And it's, I think, a proof of the power of Buddhist psychology. Also, I was never interested so much as being religious or pious. It was actually the philosophical, analytical, what His Holiness is talking about, the scientific aspect of Buddhist teaching. And His Holiness's dialogue with the Western scientists, also I feel they need also to listen more about the inner science. That the ancient Indians and Tibetans, they found out things about the mind with the mind, not just with machines and looking at their brains and treating the human being as if it was a robot, a biological or neurological robot, but realizing that the mind can make these changes. I think this is the next phase of the dialogue that His Holiness is conducting. But I don't claim great enlightenment or anything, but little progress. My wife will confirm, slight progress.
So,
I don't know if His Holiness will agree. Maybe he will.
Agree.
So,
Long time, my friend, say, unchanging our friendship. Really, really. Very good friend.
very good friend.
I do consider it the fortune of my life to be friends with His Holiness. I really do.
It sounds as though, from what the both of you have said, in the wake of what we heard from His Holiness, that if we want to be the change that we want to see in the world, the revolution begins within. And that it's a process, that revolution. And that as we change the way we think about how we interact with others, to see the enemy as ourselves, to see people we don't know as no less than we are ourselves, that this is the change that has to happen so that the world can change, then the question is, how can we implement this? And in our audience, I've introduced them, are many young people, but also people who have a lot of influence over other young people. And so I want to know your questions. What would help you to do a better job in this manner that you've already embarked on in trying to create a world that's better, to be the change, to make the world better. You're all reaching out in different ways to end or at least slow down suffering, human suffering. Max, it's remarkable what you've done at the age of 10 to start something that would help the world be better. I'm going to basically ask each one of you to kind of ask what you would want to ask of His Holiness, and then after you've finished asking those questions, I'm going to encourage His Holiness to sort of talk about his response to your questions. So, Max, what would be your question? Let me let Max talk first. Go ahead, Max.
I was just wondering, what do you think the right age is in schools for teachers to teach universal values?
So how young a student should be? Danielle, that's a very good question, Max. Danielle, do you have a question?
My question is kind of along the lines where in the millennial generation, technology has become one of the most influential factors. How do you feel about using technology as a means of engaging millennials in becoming morally better or compassionate in that sense?
Justin, do you have a question?
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, actually. I think that with social media and the outreach today, I think the platform is used apparently for negative kind of comments and things like that. How do you feel that we can change that to make, maybe a broader stream of positive outreach?
I think, not only just question, your own certain sort of opinions, I think should express. That's better. Only question, I'm not a person, of course, all-knowing. Very limited, my knowledge very limited. So I think the young people, since you have interest, so while you raise question, at the meantime, you also find the answer. So, accordingly, share with these people. That's, I think, better.
Share the positive.
I mean, their own sort of views.
His Holiness is suggesting that since you are all very consciously thinking about these things, so in addition to raising the questions, you must have already thought about this yourself. So what would be your suggested solutions if you would share that?
That's much better. That's much better.
Let's do that. Let's start with, okay, Max, let's start with you. How old do you think young people should be taught about compassion and about this inner life that can lead them towards it?
Well, in my family, my mom always tells us that once you turn the age of 10, what will you do to be of service to others? So just by what my family has been taught, I believe probably 10, because you're practically an adult, you're double digits, so.
So start early. Danielle, do you want to answer your question about the use of technology?
Well, I personally feel that technology should be embraced because we're in an era where there's really no turning back. But then we kind of look for them, there's a lot of organizations and movements. Like one that I'm involved with is Unite for Good, which is all about embracing acts of kindness and helping others engage in acts of kindness. And so by using technology to help others know that doing something nice for someone else isn't tedious work, it makes you feel nice inside too. I feel like technology is that one thing that can really push it so everyone really understands that.
And Justin, do you want to answer the question about how to use social media for good and not for bad?
Yeah, I think that I think we have a certain responsibility, and just from what I do, producing films, I consider doing social consciousness movies that mean something impactful, something that will spark maybe a thought. And I think with that, and again with positive meanings to it, I think with that, I think that spreads. I think that's a normal type of reaction.
So you're saying that you play a part, that each one of us plays a part in responding.
Absolutely.
To use it for good. So in other words, it's kind of a democratic thing, right? The majority is going to win. So the ultimate thing is that I think it's probably true that His Holiness, do you feel that that we're more likely as human beings to be good or bad?
Now here, I think I may recall one occasion with scientists, mainly I think one I remember, Richard Davidson. You see, he found that, very, very infant, yes, very, very young, I think.
6 months old.
A few months old, language not yet developed. So the one cartoon is a young two children play together. When that cartoon showed to that very young infant, that sort of child showed sort of smile or happy sort of face. Then cartoon, two young children, create problem, other one. Seeing that, the child a little bit unhappy through expression. So, conclusion. Basic human nature is more compassionate. And then, more important, constant anger, fear remain. That is very bad, or actually some scientists say, eating our immune system. So whereas more compassionate mind there, is the physical condition much better. So then our own sort of common experience, we all 7 billion human beings come from one's own mother. Sometimes I jokingly is expressing in some sort of some stories, in order to praise some great, spiritual leaders, that born from lotus. Supposed to say praising. But sometimes I jokingly express with respect, such person born from lotus may be more affection towards lotus rather than human being. So, from that viewpoint, we are fortunate. We come from our own mother. And we survived with mother's milk. So that's common experience. These merciless people, terrorists or dictators, they also, born same way. So they also very much appreciate about affection from other. One person who very much joy when some other show affection, then that person also have the potential to show affection to other. That's human nature. So we not yet explore these things. So the problem, I think everybody knows, when mixing with children, very young age, they don't care about faith, different faith, or different color, or different family background. They play together so long. That's the friendly attitude. Then play. Then problem. We're grown up. And the existing modern education, not talking about these, our value. Only talking about money, material value. Then our greed also, develop. And then how to cheat this person in order to get some money or some power. So I think existing education system, which not much talking about inner value, is in a way spoiling our basic nature of compassion. I feel that. So therefore, the education, human development, human progress, civilization, very much linked with education. Education is wonderful. Education give us education, I think, I don't know. We have this ability there. Now, education open that ability. Wonderful. Now you see something, the problem is existing education not cover these deeper human value, such as compassion. Because we are a social animal. Each individual's future entirely depends on the community. Now today's world situation is such, whole 7 billion human beings are the community, the family member, one big family. So our future, individual future, depends on the rest of the 7 billion human beings. So, and then also, you see, if we emphasize, we are same human being. Once we develop this sort of serious sort of sense of oneness of 7 billion human beings, and all human beings want a happy life, and all human beings were cherishing their own life. Once you have that kind of conviction, how to kill the other person? Same human being, same right, same desire, like yourself. Once you have that sort of conviction, through education, through use this intelligence, then I think the violence automatically reduces. Then much problem which due to too much because of the discrimination way, either faith differences or racial differences, different countries, different ideology, different system, even within same faith, same sort of community, we make distinction, rich and poor. Usually, you see people, I think when meet some important person, so-called important person, more wealth, more influential, then more smile. A poor person met, sometimes ignore. How can, if we have sort of sense of sameness, then we have to pay more attention. These poor people, they cannot manage properly, they themselves. The rich people, influential people, they not only manage themselves, but also try to control on others. Like that. So therefore, I think education, I always say, mentioning the excessive education, not complete, should include the education about inner value or inner world, like that. That also, not simply, try or be compassionate person, sufficient. Why we need compassion? And then explain the causes of compassion. These are, goals are developed according to law of causality. Each emotion very much related with immediate substantial cause, then furthermore like that, and also condition. So therefore, fuller knowledge about, I usually call, map of emotion. That's very important. Must consider as an academic subject, not a religious subject.
So I think the net effect of that is that we don't have to worry about social media because it's going to end up okay because we're largely compassionate, so it'll win in the end. So I think that's where we are there.
Thank you.
Which is good. Justin Baldoni, what is your, you've worked to create this production company about compassion, focusing on compassion. So from your perspective, what would you add to what His Holiness has said?
I'm trying to compose myself after that.
Well, you were smiling most of it. I mean, you were really...
I'm smiling through like tears that are falling down as I'm witnessing, I'm a Baha'i. That's the faith that I practice.
Oh, Baha'i.
And we're told that faith is meant, but the definition of faith is meant conscious knowledge and then the practice of good deeds. And in my life, I've never gotten a chance to stand in front of somebody who lives it. So I'm just so grateful.
But it sounds like you're trying to live it. You're trying to live it with your production company.
In a very small way, and I'm learning from my wife. And I have a newborn daughter, like 9 days old, and so I'm trying to rack my brain of what I could possibly ask His Holiness. And the only thing that I want to ask is, how can I be a good father to a little girl?
I think that question, asking wrong person. I have no experience, father's sort of experience.
I'm going to get a lot of slack for that question. I know I am.
But I think you could teach your daughter, clearly, part of his message is to teach your daughter about how to be a compassionate human being and spread it.
Absolutely.
And that's actually for all of us who are parents out there. Zendaya, you have really, through using social media, as we've been talking about, have been trying to use it to tell people about Haiti and other places where people are suffering. And so something in you is also driving this as well.
I mean, absolutely. Well, first of all, this is, crazy for me to be here. But, this is really cool for me as well because there's young people here and there's young people on the stage. And that's, we're representing for our generation. I'm only 18 years old. And I think that, I have a lot of life to live and clearly a lot to learn. But I think, what we have that's different is we have technology. And we have this crazy thing called social media. And it's, it kind of consumes our life, and I think for me at least, we have this sense of I feel like I have a sense of responsibility, you know what I mean? With great power comes great responsibility. And we have literally at our fingertips access to anything that we want and reach to millions and millions of people. And so, to me, I feel a responsibility to use that for as much good as I can. And so, just being here and seeing people, that believe in that and want to continue that. And I think, like she was saying, we can't get rid of it. Technology is here, but to use it as much as we can to promote the things that aren't, our new album or our new this or new that, but promote it for something that we love and we are passionate about and have compassion for other people and want to spread that. And it's not hard, it's a tweet. It's reaching out to someone and just saying, hey, you look good today. You know what I mean? It's small, yeah, but it makes people feel good. And I feel like, it's simple acts and small acts that, create big things and big changes. So, again, I'm honored to be here. And I hope that everyone here, especially I'm seeing some little kids out here. It's so cool to see you guys, because you guys you have no idea what's going on right now. It's crazy. And I think that it's just going to be amazing. You just... The future is right there. The future is here. The future is everywhere. And I'm really lucky to be able to be in a presence of such good energy and good spirits. And I just feel really good right here. So thank you. And
thank you so much. Speaking of social media, clearly, Jared, you've had a life of public service. You're still a young man, and you are also now the director of ideas at Google. So, is your sense that you agree that this ultimately, because there's a lot of questioning about whether it's good or bad, what we're dealing with, that there is enough energy? You must be sensing what's happening for the future.
Yeah, and what I'll say is I think we focus a lot on the tools. And for me, to the extent that we're all on this journey to be compassionate and to live in a compassionate world, I believe it's curiosity that gets us there. And I don't think we talk enough about curiosity. I'm part of a generation where 9/11 happened while I was an undergraduate. And in a couple of years afterwards, I traveled to Iran and Syria and Iraq and Afghanistan simply to just meet people my own age. And I did it sort of recklessly and foolishly. And I would never recommend anybody do that, but I'm glad I did. And the reason I'm glad that I did is because all the young people that I met in these countries were more similar to me than they were different. And the biggest thing that unified us was a shared love of technology. And if you had told me 10 years ago I would end up working at Google, I would have thought you were crazy because I'm not a computer scientist. I don't have a technical background or upbringing, but I was so passionate about technology as a vehicle to unify curiosities among young people all around the world that I couldn't imagine, spending my life doing anything else other than just doubling down on these tools, not as tools, but as a space that would unleash young people. And so, the question that I have lingering, Your Holiness, is, how do we find creative ways to nurture curiosity among a generation of young people who still have their innocence, who still have their idealism, who still have their passion and aren't jaded by some of the trappings of adulthood?
And what is your answer? Because he's told us that you have to answer the question.
I have to answer it. I think that the biggest trapping that I've seen for people of my generation is, as you go to undergraduate and then you go to graduate school, you're in this ambitious type A ecosystem where, this person wants to be governor by the age of 40, this person wants to be a Nobel laureate, this person wants to do all these things, and we sort of aspire to these careers based on titles instead of focusing on the content. And when you do that, you end up working backwards. So I think the prescription to young people is use the most valuable asset that you have as you pursue your career goals, which is your youth. And what that means is wake up in the morning and ask yourself, what are you passionate about? What are you interested in? And go do it. And don't worry about what title it carries later on. And I think that's the most valuable prescription.
Yes, very good. Really come to the chat.
You got a very good from His Holiness. He liked your answer.
I'll take it.
I think he appreciates your answer. Armand, you've been focusing on this idea of bringing people together with the. Do you have a thought or question that you want to add to this? Because your whole idea is to not have religious groups feel so separate as they are in many parts of the world. You want to pull us together and find commonality.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the question that I have for His Holiness comes from something that he just said shortly before, which is this notion that in terms of the values of peace and compassion and mercy, that sometimes higher education or institutions of education have not only the capacity of ignoring them or them being absent from that setting, but also actually spoiling them. In my personal experience as a student, I think my experience with regard to higher education being an area that can inculcate values of peace and mercy and compassion have been mixed. On the one hand, as His Holiness mentioned, through the Dalai Lama Scholarship Program, I received support here at UC Irvine to establish an interfaith dialogue group and a service learning project that was specifically for that purpose. And in addition, I had the opportunity to participate in the Olive Tree Initiative, an organization here that takes students to areas of conflict and areas of military occupation to learn about citizen peace building directly from the people living there. On the other hand, I think my participation in those very programs has taught me about some of the severe limitations that we have in the system that we have currently with regard to values of peace and compassion and mercy. And just to contextualize that, the opposite of education is ignorance. And in the Islamic tradition, there's actually two different types of ignorance. There's what's called jahda basit, or simple or innocent ignorance, which is the ignorance of the person who realizes he is ignorant. He's aware of his own ignorance, and so it's more easily remedied. And then there's jahla murakkab, or compounded ignorance. This is the ignorance of the person who is ignorant of his own ignorance, right? He is unaware of his own ignorance. And I think in that concept we find one of the greatest crises that we have in higher education today. I don't know if this is an example that His Holiness will be familiar with, but the American film The Wizard of Oz, I think, has a very good example of this. The scarecrow is in search of a brain, right? This is the part of the plot of the story. And he searches for a brain. He says, if I only had a brain with the thoughts I'd be thinking, I could be another Lincoln if I only had a brain. In the end of the film, he never finds the brain, right? But the wizard hands him a piece of paper. And he says, back where I come from my home country in Kansas, when someone doesn't have a brain, we confer upon him a diploma. And to some extent, I think this is sometimes what happens in the university setting. We take people and we give them pieces of paper and we give them titles and we give them, letters after their name to give them the impression that they have a brain. And in the process, actually, what we do is very dangerous because we take people who enter the university setting with simple ignorance, who are aware of their own shortcomings, and we give them compounded ignorance. We give them the impression of knowledge, and I think that's one of the greatest crimes, is we give them what they imagine to be an education without giving them true education. So my question, I guess for His Holiness, now I realize I'll have to answer it. So I probably shouldn't have started that way. Is, how do we instill, I think, a value that you embody, which is the fact that the more educated we become, the more humble we should become. I think that's one of the things that has been... That's one of the things that has always been most striking every time that I have met His Holiness is his humility.
It sounds like you're struggling to answer that question.
That also, you see, very much connected with what's the compassion, the more you practice that, the compassion means, you see, sense of concern about others' well-being. Then, oneself, just one. Others, now, as far as human is concerned, 7 billion. Obviously, 7 billion sort of well-being is much more important than one individual's, well-being. So then, as a result of constant sort of meditate or thinking about compassion, then automatically, you see, you consider yourself as a servant of humanity. So, in humbleness,
Then, of course, humility comes naturally. In one of the Tibetan texts, in one of the Tibetan texts known as the 8 verses on mind training, there is an explanation on what kind of compassion we should cultivate. It's not a kind of a pity looking down on others, but rather it's a sense of concern that is based upon respect and honoring the other. And the line says, whenever I interact with someone, may I not view myself as superior, but rather view the other as precious.
Regina, what would you like to say or ask?
First of all, I'm really so excited to be here and to meet. I've spiritually stalked you for a decade. I mean, I have.
That's right.
My first reason for loving him was every time I saw him, he was smiling. And I was going through a period where I said, gosh, I want to learn lessons through joy and not suffering anymore. And I read his book and thought, wow, he's been through a lot, and he smiles so much. And then I saw pictures, and I was like, he's handsome. And he was so handsome when he was young, and I was like, my husband is the wrong religion. He's a monk. God, what have you done? But it's okay. I said, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And then I said, I just got to meet him. I got to give one hug, one squeeze. So I will say that God has been compassionate because I'm here. You see him? He's so handsome. So my honest confession is I would have asked him how he stays so joyful and how he just emanates so much joy and compassion, but so much joy. He smiles so much. So today I'm just, I answer. Look.
That's right. That's right.
I'm just very
Oh.
blushing. I'm just so excited, and I don't even know how to answer I don't even know what it is, but I would just say I'm happy to experience joy with you and from you, and that would be what I would want to extend to the world. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm feeling uncomfortable sitting in between them.
That's right.
Ibu Patel, you have worked so hard, and I'm going to pass this microphone down to you to bring people together of different faiths. So there's a microphone there. Do you have a question or a comment based on what you've been hearing today?
I have a brief comment. I also want to make sure that we are able to do the traditional Hawaiian navigator ceremony.
Don't worry.
So, Your Holiness, I come to you with a heart full of gratitude. 17 years ago, I came to Dharamsala with a head full of radical spangles and the seed of an idea called Interfaith Youth Corps about bringing young people from different religious backgrounds together through service. and you heard me out, and you said the idea is only as good as what you build, and I come here 17 years later to say, I told you I would build it, I kept my vow, and I want to say thank you to you for that original inspiration. Interfaith studies programs are growing all over the country. We have professors of the emerging discipline here with us today, people like Professor Rahul Deep Gill from California Lutheran University. What Karina and Kelly and Amanda are doing here with the Center for Living Peace is meant to institutionalize interfaith studies at this university. It's growing by leaps and bounds. Your book, Toward a True Kinship of Faiths, is becoming a core text in that. And my question for you is, as somebody who has made such a deep commitment to a particular tradition, what have you learned that has moved you most deeply from other religions, from Islam, from Judaism, from Jainism, from Christianity?
Only you can answer that question. What have you learned?
To me, meeting individual person, then really kasoda impact. Like Christian, the late Thomas Merton. After I think he came to Dharamsala, and we spent I think several hours some discussion. Then I developed genuine respect, admiration of Christianity. Similarly, one occasion, now I took too long, now 0.
I know. We're going to go a few more minutes longer, but we'll try not to go too much longer.
Oh.
Thank you for your patience.
Yeah.
But what is the greatest lesson you've learned?
Oh.
Not all of them, but what is the lesson you've learned from meeting these other people?
Then some other sort of the Christian practitioner also is very much sort of impact in my mind. And then Muslim. There's some Muslim. Oh, really wonderful. Actually, I want to repeat using their sort of as a explanation. Very meaning of jihad is not harming other, but combat your own negative emotion. That's the real meaning of jihad. Then, genuine Muslim practitioner must extend their love towards entire creature of Allah. Same. Then actually I met some wonderful Muslim practitioner. So that confirmed. Their teaching have that much of the potential to create, that much power to create wonderful people. So like then among the Jewish practitioner of Judaism, equally I met wonderful people. So like that. So that actually is a more or less confirmation. These different traditions have same potential. Then philosophical field, I think the other day also I mentioned, you see, I look all major religious tradition, 3 aspects. Number 1 aspect is religion. That is same practice of love, forgiveness, tolerance, contentment, self-discipline. All major religious tradition have same. So religious aspect is concerned, all same. Philosophical aspect, big differences. Even within theistic religion, differences. Within non-theistic religions, also differences. But that's necessary. Different time, different location, and people who have different better disposition. There are differences because of the, including climate and sort of diet. All this makes differences. Therefore, we need different philosophical sort of thinking in order to develop conviction about the value of love, compassion. So, different sort of philosophy, same purpose. And it is necessary because there are many different people who have different mental disposition. Now here, within Buddhism, different philosophical views taught by one person, that's Buddha Shakyamuni. Why? You see, he told different philosophical views. These differences, some are directly contradiction. So why is Buddha, same person, you see, taught a contradictory philosophy? Certainly due to his own confusion in his mind, confusion. One day he taught this, another day he taught something. No, he deliberately teach, you see, these contradictory philosophy in order to create more confusion among his students' mind. No. Then, reason is, he taught different philosophical views according to the audience mental disposition. Same aim, be nice person, sensible person, responsible person. So therefore, from that sort of tradition, we learned, or we convinced, we need different philosophical views. Some say, some philosophical view, creator, very powerful. Then, the non-theistic, the law of causality. And actually, there's no creator, but you yourself as a creator, self-creation. In the philosophical viewpoints, big differences, but same purpose. Then, naturally develop, respect all these different traditions. Then third, cultural aspect. My Indian friend, you see, told me about 2,600 years ago, at the time, there were a lot of animal sacrifice. So it even affect farmers or economy. So at that time, Jain teacher, Mahavira, come. You see, then he specially emphasized non-violence and vegetarianism. Because of the circumstances, you see, he particularly emphasized vegetarianism. Then, I think after Mahavira, I think about 30, 40 years, isn't it? Then Buddha Shakyamuni come. So more same way, like that. Then, whether you see, correct or not, I want to seek. You see, those Muslims, I want to seek. You see, your opinions, yes, opinion. And Muhammad come. The society seems is a more nomadic sort of society. You see, nomadic. There more sort of what's the day, and no sort of because of the permanent residents. You see, go around, and then sometimes more criminal works, crimes, or because of the stealing or bully, like that. So, in Quran, some special emphasis about law. So, Sharia law emphasis. I feel like that. So that's cultural aspect. So, the religion, love, mercy, forgiveness, these, we recently, I think I want to share with you. Oh, now too long. Now,
No, you don't quiet His Holiness the Dalai Lama, do you? We want to hear this, so no, you don't have to put But we have one more guest here on our panel, and he's very special, Nanoa Thompson, because he has a ceremony that he wants to do for His Holiness for a few moments. But quickly, before we do that, what would you like to answer?
So I think one word in any way.
One word.
Oh. Concept of one religion, one truth, and concept of several religions, several truth. Now, in terms of individual, the concept of one truth, one religion is very, very relevant in order to develop single-pointed faith. In the terms of community, now in modern time, even one family, the people, family member, you see, it's a different sort of interest, different sort of faith. So therefore, in the terms of community, in terms of several people, then naturally, you see, several truth, several religion is relevant. Whether we accept or not, it exists. That's the reality. And all these major religious traditions, over, you see, nearly, I think, 2,000 or over 2,000 years, it helped humanity. It's a fact. So we have to accept that. So therefore, now, once you look, you see, more holistic, then we must respect different religious traditions. So that is the basis of harmony, mutual respect, mutual admiration. Then with that, mutual learning is the basis of genuine harmony. So now this is very necessary. Look, in the name of religion, killing, fighting, dividing, terrible. So we have to work seriously, constantly promotion of religious harmony. That's very important. Okay.
Okay. Nainoa.
Well, I just want to just say how honored I am to be with your Holiness. It's beyond my imagination. And to be on this panel with, because I'm really intimidated. I'm the only old guy on the panel, and I met a 14-year-old that taught me today, inspired me in 5 minutes of conversation, gives me hope.
What is it?
And I recognize clearly that when we talk about the issue of education, the most important school is in the home. And I met a beautiful mother, and you can see why you are her and she is you, and thank you. And I'm really honored to be in this place, in this moment, in this room, that as we look at the world with all the kinds of statistics that make us afraid, these are the kinds of moments when you can sit someplace in the moment and recognize what we say in Hawaiian is mana, power, of all these people that are in this room because of you, that follow you, that believe you, that love you. And each single person in this room, when they have an act of kindness, it's not for them or their family, it's for all of us. So we are on a voyage in our voyaging canoe. We are going around the island Earth. It's a 3-year project. It's 28 countries, it's 82 ports. We are, in many ways, Your Holiness, sailing because of you. That we've been sailing for 40 years to recover our Hawaiian traditions, identity, find a place that's important in the world, and make contributions through education. And we've found, and we've been successful. When I graduated from high school, Hawaiian language was forbidden. Hawaiian culture wasn't valued. The issue of ecology wasn't taught. Sustainability wasn't a word. The climate change didn't exist. It did, but we didn't know because of ignorance. And so when we look at your 9-day-old child. If the focus is in the next generation, when she graduates from when she graduates from post-secondary school, 25 years old, is she going to be prepared to navigate a world that's worth it? The question is education, to your point, because the reason why we go, education has got to change. It will be the most greatest definer of our future is what we teach our children, and that's our fundamental belief. That's why we sail, because of you. And I have a message from you today. It's from my master teacher. His name is Mao Piailug. When our voyaging canoe was constructed, the first in 600 years in Hawaii, there was no teachers anymore in Polynesia. All the master navigators were gone. There were 6 masters left. He was the youngest. He died 5 years ago. But I went to his island to see him in his later days and asked him, what is it to be a master navigator? And he told me many things. He wrote down a 14-page things. But in the end, what he said, to be the master, you need to become the light. And to become the light, it means you need to love. And if you are going to be a master navigator, then if there is conflict, you resolve. If there is injury, you heal. Your job is to go out to sea and get gifts and bring it back to your people. You take care of your island. The island that's in concern is the whole earth. It's the only one we have. So we sail because we are in search of humanities, and we're engaging diversity on the earth as a belief that that's important, that's powerful. But at the core of humanity is what you taught us, that what's important is your place, your home, your family, and your children. We have a word that we speak to in our culture that is equal to, I believe, what you teach in compassion, and that's aloha.
Aloha, okay.
We are searching, as we go around the world as students of you, to find the world's great navigators, those individuals that are amongst all the negative stuff that we have to deal with. That's one issue. Around the world, we are finding millions and millions of people that are moved from their heart and their minds to make sure that they're going to do these incredible acts of kindness and compassion. Because every time they do that, they do it on behalf of all of us. So this movement that is going around the world of millions of strangers I don't know, they don't know me, all we're trying to do is voyage and be part of that movement, and you are the movement. So we, on your birthday, would humbly ask permission to give you a small present. And my colleague here that's sitting in the audience didn't know that she was going to do this because I didn't know we were going to do it. But I want her to bring, she is a Kamehameha Schools graduate. She's Hawaiian. She's an engineer, just graduated from the University of Hawaii in mechanical engineering. She speaks 4.5 languages. She is fluent in Hawaiian language. She will give you an ole, and she navigated from Hawaii to Tahiti last May. It's the first leg around the voyage. I just want to fill this room with our language of aloha to you.
Lehua Kamalu. This is Miley. It comes from our forest in Hawaii. It's on behalf of my teachers. It's on behalf of my culture and our young people who are growing up fortified in sciences, knowing who they are, grounded from their place, and ready to change the world. This is on behalf of my teacher, Mao Piailug, and this is on behalf of the whole movement of compassion on the earth. And I'm asking with all humility, permission to take your story around the earth because you are our great navigator. Aloha.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's come together. Come.
He wants us to join him here, though.
This one.
Oh, this one.
Close
Come
up.
on. So as everyone gathers for the photograph, I will tell you that there's been some good news I was just given that in the several days of this event, there's been an effort to reach people all across the world with the hashtag #WithCompassion. And we've been told that this hashtag has been used over 100,000 times, reaching 150 million people around the world. And actually, the effort, I know many of you bought tickets to come here and there have been several days of this. Well, it turns out there was a surplus, and Eden Rodriguez, who is the executive producer of this event, has something that she wants to say about that. And also, this is Eden Rodriguez, who is the executive producer, but, yes? And Lama Tenzin, please, no, I'm sorry, Lama Tenzin, you have to come as well. He's very humble. Lama Tenzin, who helped, really, it's his vision who brought us here. It's all his, and he's going to be humble about it. So, go ahead, Eden, go ahead.
We're so happy and honored to share the financial disclosure with all of you for this wonderful, amazing Global Compassion Summit that's taken place over the course of many days. The total funding was $1,300,000. The total revenue from ticket sales over the course of 3 days was $2,279,791. The total expenses, also covering all of the events over 4 days, were $1,792,779, which leaves us with a beautiful surplus of $487,011. So we kindly request Your Holiness to share this surplus wherever it is needed. Your Holiness's recent trip to Australia, he was very interested in meeting the indigenous people, and he was very concerned about the preservation of their culture. In addition, recently, the earthquake in Nepal. Also,
not only preservation, but modern education.
Modern education.
Firstly, hygiene.
Okay, and personal
Really,
hygiene.
very important.
Very important. Also, here at UCI, we have the Dalai Lama Fellows and the Dalai Lama Scholarship. So these are areas and ideas that we've thought of with the Global Compassion Summit, but there are many different areas throughout the world and internationally that His Holiness is concerned with, and because he travels all over the world. So we leave it in his hands to offer the surplus wherever needed.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, everyone, all the panelists. Thank all of the organizers. Thank you, Eden and Lama Tenzin. And most of all, ladies and gentlemen, let us thank His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama.
Okay. Now finished. So, thank you. 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 Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
May I please have your attention for anyone attending the private luncheon? Please proceed to the concourse level and exit the northeast exit to the shuttle pickup. There'll be a UCI host to assist you onto the shuttle. Thanks so much for coming.